Okay, so finally, this car is done. For what has seemed like an eternity, I've been working on this car, and I'm not even gonna lie, I'm just glad it's done. Um, in between the time that I got this car, Mcfarlane has released, I want to say three more Batmobiles. He gave us the Batman Forever Batmobile, and then we had the animated series one that they re-released. I didn't do anything to that one, but I did customize the Batman Forever Batmobile. So I stopped working on this one so I could customize that one because that one was a much easier customization project than this right here. As happy as I am that McFarlane gave us this Tumbler, because the Tumbler is one of my favorite vehicles, they definitely took some liberties with the design choices. And I understand that a lot of that probably came as a result of just cost effectiveness to give it to us. I am happy they gave us a two-seater. This is, if I'm not mistaken, the first one they've given us that was a two-seater. The animated series one doesn't count because that was done by DC Direct years ago, and they just re-released the mold. But this right here is their own design that they did themselves and decided to give us the two-seater, which I'm glad they did. It's spacious on the inside. There's a lot of great things they gave us, but it was also the issue with this vehicle is that there were things about it that just to me didn't look like the Tumbler when you look at it. It didn't give necessarily the profile. So some of the things I did on here, which a lot of I knew going in what I wanted to do, but as I was working on it, I decided to do more than what I initially planned on doing, and that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to finish this thing, because I just kept looking at it and I'm like, it just doesn't really look like the Tumbler to me. It's like something always just looked off about it. I don't know if it was the proportions or what. I know the biggest issue for me personally was the spoilers. The spoilers were horrible. Um, they were not anywhere close to being accurate. So I knew that those spoilers had to go because I knew that this right here was not gonna cut it. That's not it. That's just I mean, I get McFarlane, has to be cost effective in some areas, but when you look at what they did with some of the other Batmobiles and how detailed they got on, with the sculpts and just, the accuracy they had with the sculpts. They took liberties on those too, but they look more like the movie. So when you customize and you look at them, you still can kind of see a recreation of those Batmobiles from those movies. This one was the one that just looked off. Like it just looked like, like I don't know, like a crazy little cousin. You know that meme with the dragons where you got the two dragons and they look at each other and they look fierce, and you got the one with the goofy eyes. That's how I felt that this Tumbler looked for McFarlane. So, and then aside from that, the paint job, they took some liberties with the paint, with that whole weathering, and which we don't. That wasn't even in the movie. We don't even see the Tumbler get scuffed up like that. It was like all like a matte finish with a militarized look to it. So I had to just kind of go in there and just doctor this thing up, to say the least. Um, it's I did a lot of stuff on the inside. Some of the things I kind of did outside of the spoilers, which I did redo those. Um, I did add the dash inside the cockpit because even though he did give us a two-seater on the inside, there was still a lot of space where there's a lot of monitors inside the Tumbler. And that's one of the cool things about it is that you have all these this militarized tech inside of it, and there was a lot of room to add that in there. Now I know McFarlane has come out and said that he enjoys seeing what customizers can do with his products. Well, let me tell you, buddy, this right here was one of those ones that you had to really reach in deep into the well to do this. Now, I want to start off by saying I want to give props to Ibrahim Mustafa because, and also not only give props to him, but I also want to blame him for this because him showing me what was possible with customizing these vehicles, it caused me to constantly be looking at this thing and saying, hey, what else can I do to it? Well, I think I might be able to do this to it. I think I might be able to do that to it. And so, yes, I got a lot of tips and tricks from watching his videos. And I actually, I talked to him about it. I said, hey, man, I said, I blame you for this because, you were like Morpheus and I'm like Neo, and you just opened the door to the possibilities of things that could be done through customization on these vehicles. I give them props for showing me epoxy scope, the styrene, the different forms of styrene, little tips and tricks, you can use for, just finding things around the house to use inside the customizations. I did all that, and then that plus a few tricks of my own that I've learned along the way to incorporate into this thing to help me out, because a lot of this stuff is just trial and error. So I want to give a shout out to him. Who else? There's a few other customizers out there that I kind of look to. So I got a few guys on Instagram that actually, I saw them, they got it, and I think they're out, in some other countries or whatever. But I believe that I don't know the guy's name. I think one of the guys' name is it's like Cappuccino or something like that. He does customs on there, and he has a beautiful one he did, which I got some of my ideas as far as how to redo the back end where the spoilers are. He raised the rear spoilers. He raised those up, and I did that initially, and then I decided to go a step further and actually add the actual shock suspension on there and the hydraulic tubes on mine. But one of the things he did I thought was cool, which I was gonna do and I didn't because I just got just worn out on working on this thing, was he actually, if you look along here on if you find his page, he actually tapered this in. So the thing about the Tumbler is it looks like a Lamborghini. It's a cross between a Lamborghini and a Hummer. And he actually tapered his end right here. I wanted to do that. He actually cut along this seam, and then somehow he adjusted it, but he didn't have a YouTube channel to actually showcase how he did it. He just kind of posted some pictures. So I was kind of trying to look at it from there and kind of gauge how to do it. I could probably still go back in and do it, and I may do that down the line if I feel compelled to, just to cut along there and then find ways to add, something to attach it, maybe some brackets or something like that. We can glue, add some screws in, some kind of way to make it taper a little bit more. But I actually don't know if I will do that, just because I already own the Moto King. I bought the Moto King in between the time that I got this one, and I wanted to get the Moto King one because it's it's a more accurate representation of the Tumbler, and it's more detailed. It's articulate, and it's actually a true 1/12 scale version of it. But I used that actually when I got it as a model basis for some of the things I did on here, so I could actually get a better representation of how some of this stuff was supposed to scale, and how it's supposed to look. So that I have that one as well. I'll probably do a comparison and have them side by side later on in the video. But for now, let's see. I'll go ahead and start showing you guys some of the things I did. As you can see, I did redo the paint. So I added, at first I did a ultra matte finish on there, but it still kind of gave like a little bit of shine, more shine on it than I wanted to for this vehicle, because if you look in the movie, there's not any kind of reflective surface on the Tumbler. It's all just extremely matte. And so the problem with using ultra matte is that it still kind of gives, when you use spray paint, it kind of still kind of gives just a little bit of sheen on there, and I didn't want any sheen at all. So what I did was I used a true flat black and used that one, and you can kind of see sheen out because it's sitting directly under light. But when you actually have it just just sitting in natural light, it gives off, especially next to the other Batmobiles I've done, it gives off a really that flat, militarized, look to it, and I love it. Another thing I did, which I'll take you guys in so you can see, I'll go into details on some of this stuff. And just I got Lucius Fox right here, since he came with the vehicle, and Lucius built the Tumbler, and since we're doing modifications, why not have Lucius in the video? So, but if you look here, you can kind of see, this is some of the things I did. I redid this. I forgot to mention, that was one of the other big things about this vehicle that drew a lot of ire for people, was how the front nose on this thing was too thin and too narrow. So what I ended up doing, I took some epoxy sculpt, and then I added it on to the front and just reshaped it how I want it to be. I think I don't know if it's how accurate it is, but I molded it on there on the nose, worked it around the lever button so I could open the cockpit. So that was also important. You gotta make sure you leave enough space so you can actually have some give there so it still can function. But I just went ahead and just added that on there. initially when I did it, I added the epoxy scope on there, let it dry, and then I shaped it the way I wanted it to, around like the little window parts and all that stuff. And when I spray painted it, I didn't like the texture that it gave off because it was like real shiny and smooth. Because the epoxy scope is a different texture than the plastic, so it's gonna, have a different look when it hits paint, from what I gathered. So talking to Ibrahim again, I said, hey, you work with epoxy scope a lot. It's not really giving me what I want in, as far as like, comparison to the rest of the vehicle. It's too much like of a difference in like texture. And he actually suggested, he said, hey, just take like some styrene, which I did. He's like, just add like a piece of styrene around it. So I took a very thin sheet of styrene. I went back and traced around there, and then I shaped it, and I made a template to carve out these windows right here. You can see on there. So I carved those out with an X-Acto knife after I traced around and made the design I wanted for the windows on there. And then I just wrapped it around there, glued it, and it actually held extremely well. And so once I did that, I said, hey, well, let me go back and add the actual details that the Tumbler has. So it has like these little, I don't know what they are, these little things on top of the windows. And then it has these little flaps here. Initially, I think these are supposed to be like the steps things that Batman uses to get inside the vehicle. So I added those on there with some more pieces of styrene. I just cut them to the shape I wanted and folded them over, and they've actually done really well and held on there. I used a sheet of light gel. So I used a dark sheet of light gel to actually make the little windshield part. So I added that underneath the styrene before I glued it on. So I made one big piece. I glued that into the styrene sheet that I carved out for the shape of the nose, and then I glued everything down on there. Held wonderfully. The lever still works. I'm not gonna press it right now because I'll show you here in a minute. My light system is attached to the roof because I added lights to it. As you can see, the light system's it runs on the top of the roof. So when I press this button, it kind of like, this thing has a lot of like spring action on it. So the problem that I have with that is that I didn't properly secure the wiring on the inside of this thing, so it kind of flickers once that thing opens up, because it's tugging on the wiring. So I drilled a hole and ran my wiring all around it. So I used electrical tape, which I probably should have used in retrospect. I probably should have just used what's that shit called? Shrink tube, because shrink tube has a better hole on it. I'm not good at soldering, so I didn't do any soldering on it, which I wish knew how to do, or I was efficient at it. But in the end of the day, we got. This is it. I also added I used some styrene tubes and some epoxy scope to add those little I don't know what they are. They're more like struts they have on there, because the Tumbler's got a bunch of struts on there. Underneath there, these are actually supposed to be like shock suspension right there. On the actual Tumbler, they actually have springs on there. So what I did was, since it's got to be like a half oval shape, I don't know what it was. It was from some extra pieces I had from an IKEA shelf that mounts to the wall. And I took the little things, like the little plastic pieces that the screw's supposed to go into, that go into the wall, and I cut them in half. And I just spray painted them with gold. And then I added those on there. Let's see. So you can get a better look at those. This is it from the front here. And then I just spray painted. Those are the original little struts in there. I was gonna change those out too, but I didn't feel like dealing with that. So I just used a chrome pen and just colored the chrome parts on there, and then paint the other parts, the goldish bronze, whatever that is. I use different types of paint trying to get the coloring right on that, because the Tumbler, you see different versions of the Tumbler where it's like bronze, it's like bright gold, it's like different accented colors on there. So I kept trying different versions on there, and that was kind of like, the paint kind of came out a little lumpy, but I'm not too worried about it because it's deep in there, so you're not really gonna see it that much. Then also with the chrome pen, I took the struts on the side and I went along those. I don't know if you can see it, but on the outer part, this is supposed to be almost like a shinier finish. And I added that on there, but I mean, you can see it some when you're looking at it in natural lighting, but because it differentiates from the flat black paint of the rest of the vehicle. But I added that on there. I also did the rims. I painted the outer part of the rim and then did the chrome part on the inside of the rim. At the top here, you can see, so it goes to the spoilers. The spoilers I use is more styrene. This was like a tricky thing to do because I didn't really know how to, trying to figure out how to get the old ones off. So taking the old ones off and then finding ways to make new ones that would kind of like somewhat look and fit and give the same, the same proportions as the actual Tumbler. That was the difficult part for me trying to do this. So what I came to realize is that I used the ends of safety pins and I cut them, and then I basically had to map out, because the ones we had originally on here they were just too small. They were like really stubby, which I showed y'all earlier, and that just wasn't gonna work because it just doesn't fit the vehicle. So what I did was I filled in the holes, the original holes from the other ones, with some super putty, and then I I painted over it, smoothed it out best I could, which I did a kind of a horrible job on it, but you really can't tell because they're underneath the where the new spoilers are. And then I took the safety pins, cut them, measured them out, measured out the spoilers and how wide I wanted them, and then I took a styrene rod for each one, ran it through there to see if like the length was wide enough, and it was. And then I went back and I did the actual spoiler flaps, and I sized those to where they needed to be. I had to use the Motor King one because the original ones I did, they looked good, but they weren't accurate. So I went back and got the Motor King and looked at how that one was on it, and to see the size of each one of the flaps to get a better accurate, representation of it. But I did the rear ones, and then I even added those little star marks that are on top of the things. Back here, you can see I did the suspension on there. I had to do, this is where I think I did the most cutting and just Frankensteining on this thing, because right here I cut the back one because these flaps, they set too low to the tires, and it wasn't sitting up high enough. It didn't give the right accurate, the accurate profile to it. Also, that was another thing. There's too much space in between each spoiler, which was throwing things off. So initially I cut it and I broke this part off. This part just tabs in right here, and you can see on this part here, that's just sitting on there. But this part, Mcfarlane sculpted it correctly, because when you look at the actual Tumbler, it has this little thing with the little holes and stuff in it. He sculpted that part correctly. The problem was this was actually laying flat on top of the turbine, on the thruster. It needed to flip and sit up, which is like it's doing now, to give it that elevation and height. So I cut that, and then I set it up. I cut off the bar. I don't know if you can see in here, this part right here, I had to cut. This part was attached, but I cut it, and then I added a styrene, or not styrene, I actually added some metal rods I got from Hobby Lobby. I bent them, and then to extend it out like it's supposed to be, I drilled a hole in each part of the plastic and just slid those in there. So now it's actually attached the way it's supposed to be, like it is on the actual vehicle. I used more rods and styrene to make these hydraulic pumps under here. And those, were a bit of a struggle, but they came out, okay. And then on the shock suspension, more styrene. Styrene's our best friend for these projects. Again, thank you, Ibrahim Mustafa. Not glazing, just giving props where they're due. I took some springs that I had ordered off Amazon, spray painted the styrene rods, slid those over top of them to give it, those actual shock suspensions that the Tumbler actually has, because I always think that's a cool thing about the vehicle. It's just, it's one of my favorite vehicles. It's not, people complain, they say it's not really a Batmobile, but I like, the modernization and the groundedness of the vehicle. I think it's a cool design to have, a Tumbler and Lamborghini mix. Because it almost looks like an RC car the way it's designed, which I think is pretty cool. But I added those, and I added the gauges. I just took some enamel dots, and I went around it with a chrome pin, and then took one of the ends of a safety pin and made those little dials on there. And then I add this little piece right here, this little tube. In the movie, that's actually it's a lipstick camera that the stunt drivers used to actually drive the vehicle. So that's actually what runs the cameras and stuff on the inside. So that gives them visual, because the Tumbler, clearly you don't have any side view mirrors or any kind of rear view mirrors, which I don't think any Batmobile does. But that is what they used on here, and they just kept it in the film and they painted it, to give it, to add it, add it in there as a detail. This is the other side, the spoilers and everything. Just did a basic paint job on the thruster. I did a flat black finish on the inside of there, so it looks empty. I could have added lights to that, but I mean, like I said, it got to a certain point where I've done so much stuff to this vehicle, and I just kept adding things to do to the vehicle along the way that I just was kind of like, screw it. And then especially when I knew I had the Moto King one coming, I was like, well, that one's gonna be more accurate anyway, no matter what I do. So there's no sense in going all the way out for this one. This one will just be added to the Mcfarlane shelf with the rest of the other Batmobiles, which they all look nice together when I have them all together, which is pretty dope. So I do like having this as a part of the collection. But I'm gonna show you guys the inside. I redid this rack that it has on the top. Added one of those on there because that's another thing that helps with the profile, because the actual Tumbler has that rack in the middle that kind of like takes away some of that empty space that's up there. And the original vehicle in its original form, when we got it, didn't have that on there. That's another thing. There's just a big gap in between there, and it kind of threw things off. So that helped a little bit when you look at the profile of it. Now I'll put this back on the stand, and I'm gonna open this thing up and show you guys the inside of it. Now, this thing right here, the button still works. You do it. I just have to open it up slowly so that the wiring in there doesn't mess it up. But I'm gonna turn on the lights, and then I'll take you guys inside so you can see. All right, what I did to the inside of this thing. You'll see that these lights, they flicker a little bit, but for the most part, I mean, they do hold. The lights, again, I got from Evan Designs. Another tip I got from Ibrahim. Evan Designs is a great company, and they are very helpful in showcasing and giving you information about what you need for your project. The beautiful thing about this thing, about the lights that Mcfarlane had set up, is that he sculpted in where the lights were supposed to go. So it made it easy to just drill a hole through there and just like, size it with the actual lights, and then just slide them through. And then I just glued them on there. Out here I had to actually make the holes for these. Sorry if that's too bright, guys, because these bulbs are extremely bright. But I had to drill the holes in for there, measure them out, make sure they're the same equal distance. And I used, I think these are 3 millimeters here for the 8 that are on this initially in the front, and in the back one I used a 5 millimeter bulb, because there's 2 big ones that sit in the back there, which I don't think you can see them right now, but there's 2 back there. I got 2 of the Batman Begins Batmans. So I got one already in here in the cockpit. And then I got another one to kind of display my Batman Begins setup. If you look on the inside here, I'll show you. All right, so I added this dash, made everything out of styrene on that, and I made the monitors on the monitor screens on there in the front dash. I don't know if you can see in there, but I added I don't know what kind of thing it was on there, but it's like I guess a tracking system that Batman has on that in that middle dash, or he gives like diagnostic on the Tumbler's layout. So I drew. I don't know if you can see it. I took a piece of like a little sponge, a piece of a sponge, and I made like the shape of the Tumbler, and then I took a pin, a little safety pin, and I just chiseled out a little design of the Tumbler on there, so it looks like it's showing the schematics of the Tumbler inside there. And then I put a green gel over top of it, cut it in a circle, threw it on there, and slapped it in the middle so it kind of looks like that. I used the Hot Toys, Justin's Collectibles. I used his page as a reference on the Tumbler, because he has all the Tumblers, and he gave a detailed look on the inside to kind of help me design the inside of this thing so I can get a better representation. The cool thing about the lights, though, that I like is that those are the front lights there, but because of where they're running at, I carved out a circular hole because Batman has that little like compartment where the tumbler slides over and goes into like the little nose part. He can shoot the weapons and everything. So McFarlane did a great job of actually sculpting in where it was supposed to go. So I just made like a little semicircle and made a space where it looks like he could actually go in there, even though he can't actually fit. But the cool thing about the lights is that the lights, shine. They're so bright that they shine from underneath there, so it kind of gives like the illusion that he can actually slide in there and utilize that space. And then also, if you look on the monitor screen, he gave us a pretty dope monitor screen already on there. What I did with that was I took a green light gel and then I glued it over top of the actual sticker he already had on there, so it looks darker and it has that military monitor look to it. Even added some of the ones on the side panels. Let's see if I can get a shot of those, so you can kind of see I redid and added on to the HUD, and I painted on there a little thruster button. I just used a piece of like just plastic I had laying around the house, and I cut it and painted and edited it in there. As you can see, I got the monitors that go on the wall there, or on the side of the inside of the vehicle. So I did a lot of different little things to it just to add detail, which I don't know why I even did it, just because I know this is gonna sit on the shelf and ain't nobody gonna really see this, but I know it's there. It was fun to do, just see if I could do it. So it was pretty cool to work on this thing and do this project. And I think it's cool to McFarlane, just like I said, even though, we gripe about like, little details and things, I think it's cool that McFarlane actually gives us, these vehicles in this scale, just, to have with our collection and our figures and things like that. I hate that, I don't know, no one said definitively if they are losing the license to Mattel or not. No, Mattel just acquired the license. I don't know if McFarlane's still gonna make things, so I guess they still have it through half of 2026. So I would love to see him give us the Bat. I would love to see us get the 66 Batmobile. We know that the Justice League Batmobile is on the way, and probably going to get the BVS alternate also along with that one, which that's the one I probably want to get, is the BVS one. And then hopefully we get the Pattinson one. So, I mean, at the rate McFarlane pumping these Batmobiles out, I would assume that we're going to at least get finished with those. But like I said, I really hope we do get the Bat, because I think that would be great to finish off this the Nolan trilogy vehicles, since we only have one more to go and a few more characters. We still need Ra's al Ghul, still need Talia, still need Jim Gordon, still need Alfred. And I was hoping, since they kind of been going along the lines with Hot Toys, I was hoping that maybe we would get a Bat Armory, because for one of my next projects, I plan to build the Bat Armory, not from The Dark Knight, but the one from The Dark Knight Rises, because I think that is the definitive Bat Cave of the trilogy. That's like the Bat Cave at its peak when it's finally finished. And I do hate in the film that we don't get to see more of it, but I think it has a great contemporary design and look to that Bat Cave, and I love the way, like, the bat comes in when it's under the waterfall and it sits on, like, those giant like pillar cube things or whatever. So I would love to get that vehicle from McFarlane, so that way I could build out a whole. I would do just like what's my man's name? Who is it? Charles Alexander Jr. I like following his page because he does a lot of great customs. He did recently did the Batman Forever Batcave, and so I actually got some ideas from him as far as wanting to